Hello, this is an overview of ChillETL, a master scheduler for Azure Data Factory. Here's our agenda for this brief presentation. We'll talk about the problem we're trying to solve, give an overview of ChillETL, talk about the architecture, then the components, features of ChillETL, what the implementation process looks like, and how you could try the product out. First, let's talk about the problem. ETL development typically involves importing a large number of tables and files and objects from various sources and processing them. Some of the processing can be done concurrently, while other processing would have dependencies. Some processes run daily, others once per week, some once per month, and some on demand. Failures typically occur at the worst possible time. Come in the morning and you find out a process failed. The BI shop has to scramble to figure out what needs to run again while the business is complaining that the data is not ready on time. So what are some alternatives to solving this problem? One is just develop your ETL architecture on the fly and hope for the best. The problem with this is you could end up with what we could call spaghetti code, whereas as you discover new dependencies and new processes, kind of duct tape them in, and you end up with something that can't scale, can't be maintained, and it's difficult to troubleshoot. If you get a failure in the morning, it's usually very difficult to figure out what processes need to run, so you end up running everything from scratch while the business complains about major delays. Clearly, that's not the best route to go. Another alternative is invest time in developing, testing, and debugging a complete ETL architecture. You just have to tell the business users you're working on developing the back-end processes and won't be able to deliver any data for several months. We could call that reinventing the wheel. You're trying to build something that's already out there. Also, you could just hear the business groan about why does IT always take so long to do something. While you're busy developing that back-end architecture, the business doesn't see anything and they feel like you're behind in the project and not going to deliver on time. Or you could use ChillETL. ChillETL is, as I said earlier, a master scheduler for Azure Data Factory. It's complete, it's proven in that it's been run in several different environments, tested, debugged, and it can be implemented in less than a day. So you could have the whole architecture in place in less than a day. It allows you to orchestrate many different schedules, daily, weekly, monthly, and you could monitor the process in real time. Let's talk about the architecture to ChillETL. There's actually two data factories with ChillETL. One we call the worker and one we call the controller. The worker is what connects to your different data sources to move data from a source to a target and to process that data. The controller is what tells the worker what processes to run and when to run them. The controller determines that by connecting to a metadata database, which is in SQL Azure. So the controller, when a job starts up, the controller looks in that metadata database to find out what processes need to run, which could run concurrent, and which ones need to be run sequentially. Also in this architecture are Azure Logic Apps. We use Azure Logic Apps to schedule different jobs. So a Logic app, let's say your daily schedule, would be an Azure Logic app that calls the controller and tells it to kick off the daily job. So you would go into that Logic app and just pick when you want that Logic app to run. We also use Logic apps for notifications. So if there's a failure, the controller will call a Logic app that sends out email notifications. Lastly, because everything is in the SQL Azure database, we can use Power BI to report on what is going on in terms of what processes have run, which runs are currently running, which ones are pending, and also if there are any error messages. Let's look at this from a different standpoint. Let's just list out the components. The components that you get with ChillETL are the controller data factory. That's a complete data factory that you could install using an Azure template, and it has everything that is required to run all the different jobs that are defined in the metadata database. So we also provide a SQL database which is going to be populated with the processes and schedules that you want to run. We also provide some data factory templates and logic app templates. So the worker data factory is what you would develop to connect to your various data sources. You would create pipelines in that worker. We provide some templates to save you time in developing a lot of the more common pipelines. We also provide the Power BI operational reports that connect to the metadata database to show what is running and what has run. Also included with ChillETL is an Excel add-in. The main purpose of this Excel add-in is to provide a quick way to populate the metadata database. So if you could picture an Excel workbook with multiple sheets, maybe one sheet is a list of schedules, and then you enter in additional rows in that sheet, and then you use the add-in, which basically just reads the data from that Excel workbook and stores it in the SQL metadata database. The add-in also has some other tools. It has a SQL generator. So a lot of the SQL that's required for ETL tends to be a little redundant. So you could use the SQL generator to generate common views and stored procedures that are used in a lot of ETL projects. The add-in also has a Power BI editor. So if you put all your descriptions for fields, basically if you create a data dictionary in Excel, you could use the add-in to generate a lot of the SQL and also to update your Power BI models with descriptions that you have in that data dictionary. You could think of this add-in as kind of a BI Swiss Army knife. So let's talk about some of the features of ChillETL. It's metadata driven. So everything that it does in terms of what needs to run, what time, what processes, what pipelines are all defined in the metadata. What this means is adding tables and procedures does not require adding additional pipelines. What I mean there is if you have one pipeline that pulls data, let's say, from a source, if you want to pull 50 different tables from that same source, you don't have to create 50 pipelines. You just use that one pipeline, and then you use the metadata and the ChillETL controller, and it will tell that pipeline to run, let's say, 50 times for the 50 different tables that you need. Also, trying to find out what the schedule is for, let's say, a daily and a weekly job does not require going through the code, doesn't require going through, let's say, some master pipeline. Typically in a lot of projects, people create a master pipeline and they start adding calls to child pipelines in it as requirements change over time. The problem is people on your team who don't know Data Factory have no idea what is run on each schedule, because just opening up that master pipeline is not going to give them the quick answer they want. Because it's all metadata driven, they're able to view the metadata through Power BI reports to find out what's run. Another feature is ChillETL is an open architecture. It uses Azure Data Factory, SQL Azure, Agile Logic Apps, and Power BI. So there's no proprietary components to ChillETL. If you license ChillETL, you get the controller, which, as I said earlier, is a Azure Data Factory with multiple pipelines in it. You basically get, if you want to think of it, all the source code, which you could then modify if your needs end up being slightly different from other organizations. Another feature of ChillETL is intelligent retry. What this means is schedules, if there's a failure, can be resumed at the point of failure instead of running the entire job. So let's say all your data is staged, but then late in the process, one stored procedure fails. You're literally able to just right-click on that failure and just say retry, and ChillETL will start the job again, but it won't reprocess what's already been done. It will bypass all the processes that already succeeded, rerun the failed ones and all the pending ones. The time to recover can be significantly reduced. Another feature is ChillETL reduces development time. The approach to ChillETL can be thought of as modular programming. You create one pipeline for each data source. So back to my example of I want to pull 50 tables, let's say, from Salesforce. I only need one pipeline, and then the ChillETL approach will take that one pipeline and allow you to run it 50 times for the 50 different objects that you're pulling. So using ChillETL will minimize the number of pipelines you have to develop, and therefore the number of pipelines you have to maintain. ChillETL also has this Excel add-in, which eliminates a lot of the methodical, redundant tasks like creating 50 merge stored procedures and views. It also, because you could generate SQL from a data dictionary using this add-in, this ChillETL ends up encouraging building a data dictionary. In a lot of projects, developers start off with a source to target document, start their development, but never update that document. With this add-in, you would update the document because that document will generate a lot of SQL for you. It will also allow you to get descriptions from the business, put them in this Excel workbook, and then update the descriptions in Power BI from this workbook. Lastly, ChillETL provides real-time reporting. So this is an example of a Power BI report in ChillETL. You can see what processes have succeeded, which process is running, and which process is pending. So what's the implementation process look like? Once you install ChillETL, you clearly would have an empty metadata database. The first thing is in the worker to create pipelines for each process type. So again, one pipeline for each data source, regardless of how many objects you're pulling from that data source. This is what you do in the worker. Again, we provide a lot of templates that can save you some time in this development. Then after you create these pipelines, you define those pipelines in the metadata. Use the Excel add-in to do that. Then you define the processes that use these pipelines. So back to that example of 50 tables, you could literally just copy that list of tables to the Excel workbook and then use the add-in to populate the metadata from that list. You then define schedules and what processes run in the schedules. So a process could be run in multiple schedules. Some processes may run in the daily, weekly, and monthly schedules. Other processes may only run certain times. And you just define as many schedules as you need. There's no limit. Then you create Azure Logic Apps to trigger these schedules. We provide a template for the Logic Apps. So basically for each schedule, you simply run the template, plug in what schedule you want it to run, then the time you want it to run, and you're all set. After you do this, you sit back and chill and let ChillETL run everything for you. So will this work in your environment? Clearly, that's something you want to know before you actually license ChillETL. So what we offer is a try it before you buy it option, where we actually host the controller in our environment, but the worker runs in your tenant. Keep in mind, the worker is what connects to your data. So at no point does our controller that's hosted in our environment connect to your data. You could run as many schedules as you want. You could basically set up your entire ETL process to see if it will work. Then, if you decide to proceed and license ChillETL, you install the controller in your environment, and then to migrate from this trial to the ChillETL license, it typically takes less than a half day. And it's mostly transparent to the business that sees how many different schedules you're able to produce in such a short amount of time. For more information, please just send an email to info@clouddata.solutions. Thank you for your time.